The Uninvited is a pretty famous movie. Usually it's one of the first movies people mention when talking about ghost movies from the 40s. Well, there honestly weren't that many ghost movies that actually had ghosts. Usually there turned out to be no ghost at all, just that the person was crazy or someone really wanted people to believe there was one, but in The Uninvited there actually is a ghost. Two of them, actually. That's not to say that the movie is great, though. The Uninvited starts off with a music critic and his sister randomly climbing around cliffs, and their idiot dog chases a squirrel into a partially open basement window of some random house. Instead of doing the sane thing and ringing the bell to see if anyone's home and saying, "Hey, my dog chased a squirrel into your house, and by the way, you should keep your basement windows closed," they just break into the house and get the dog. And then they spend time wandering around admiring the house. The sister, Pamela, convinces her brother Ricky to buy the house, which miraculously is for sale for a ridiculously low price. The former owner is this crusty old guy, Commander Beach, who has a granddaughter named Stella, who is a bit obsessed with the house. They got the house for cheap because of the rumors that it was haunted, because Stella's mother died in the house, but nobody really believes that it is, at least not at first. After moving in, they start to hear wailing and sobbing in the night. And while Commander Beach forbids his granddaughter from going to the house, she goes anyway, partially because she likes the house and partially because she's becoming romantically involved with Rick. The ghost seems to affect Stella the most. It's just generally annoying to anybody else, but for her, it possesses her, makes her mutter in Spanish, and nearly has her fling herself off a cliff. Despite the house obviously being bad for Stella, the idiot inhabitants keep letting her come, which leads to her grandfather sticking her in a sanitarium, which is also where Rick and Pamela go to investigate what's going on, because apparently Stella's mother had been there. The keeper of the sanitarium, Mrs. Halloway, is off her rocker and seems to want Stella to go to the house despite there being a ghost after her. Stella figures out that there are two ghosts, one of her mother, Mary, and another that is more malevolent, revealed to be a Spanish maid who her father had an affair with. However, it's all confused by the fact that the maid actually turns out to be her actual mother. For some reason, Stella, recognizing this fact, banishes the ghost of the maid from the house, and Rick manages to banish the ghost of Mary by laughing at it and throwing candles. That scene is actually the only time you actually see a ghost. Usually the presence of ghosts is felt by the characters rather than seen, as a chill or a smell, and some opening doors and whatnot. But at the end you finally see a ghost, and Rick basically laughs at it and throws some candles, and it flees the house. It pretty much ends there with no real denouement. And honestly, I was left wondering why they bothered to make this film. It's based on a book, Uneasy Freehold by Dorothy McArdle, which I've never read, so I can't speak to the film's accuracy to its source material, but honestly, there's not much of a story here. Most of the runtime in the movie is spent on filler, trying to develop the characters, but it's done awkwardly, as they're all clear archetypes, and usually it's all played out for laughs more than anything. For example, Rick takes Stella out on a boat ride and then proceeds to get sick and sweat a lot. It doesn't move the plot forward. It's supposed to just be funny, I guess. But the problem is the actors are so hammy that it's tough to laugh with the movie. Instead, you might laugh at it. The ghost storyline is slow and plodding, and by the time you see a ghost at the end, it's not frightening in the least. Not that they ever really tried, as the main character's reaction is laughter. If he doesn't take the ghost seriously, why should the audience? The soundtrack is also an issue. It's almost consistently lighthearted, as if it were a comedy. But even though there are many comedic moments, it seems that this bleeds over to the more serious scenes as well, so it never really builds any tension. The one thing the movie excels at is the cinematography, which is really good. But comparing the general look of the film to The Phantom Carriage, which was made 23 years earlier, the 1944 effort craps out big time. I didn't hate the movie, however. I just felt that it tried too hard to be too many things, and it didn't excel at any one of them. It's trying to be a horror movie, a mystery, a comedy, and a romance, and it doesn't do any of them well. It's just kind of below-average movie that happens to be an important part of film history. Oh well, not every piece of history is great. I give it a 4 out of 10.